Episode 16, New Plans. Luigi sat in the back seat of Wario's car, which appeared to be a larger, four-seater version of the one he drove in the Double Dash Kart tournament, as the car zoomed over the dirt road, leaping through the mushroom plains at a high speed, kicking up a cloud of dirt as it went. It didn't help Luigi that the car was a convertible, and as such, by the time the car came to a stop at the gates of Toad Town, his outfit was a great deal dirtier than it had been before.
Don't you think you should have, I don't know, driven a little slower?
He asked timidly as he got out.
Wahaha!
Wario roared as he exited the car along with his brother.
Now that I'm getting back in the game, nobody's gonna hold me to no loss, ya wimp.
Luigi sighed. Why had he even bothered to ask? Turning his thoughts from his unpleasant companions, he entered Toad Town with Wario and Waluigi behind him. The afternoon sun was still high in the air and there was a pleasant breeze drifting down from the plains. To Luigi's surprise, Toad Town was already starting to look a whole lot better. Gazing around as he strolled down the main street, he saw Toads hard at work, repairing the mushroom houses, repainting their fire-scorched roofs, and removing the debris from their gardens.
Hey, Luigi!
Cried Bank Toad merrily as he stood on the roof of a yellow toad house, clutching a hammer in one hand. There were two other toads with him and they seemed to be in the process of repairing a hole that a stray bob-omb had caused.
Back so soon? Yet?
Luigi sighed. He still felt dejected over how terrible his trip to Mushroom City had went, but he forced himself to remain positive. Even though Cobal was now beyond his help, he had still taken a critical step towards freeing the Mushroom Kingdom.
What are you doing up there?
He asked, watching as Bank Toad wiped his sweat-drenched brow with a handkerchief.
I thought you were a banker.
Bank Toad shrugged.
Hey, I've done my fair share of mining, too. Figured I might as well try my hand at the hammer since I'm so good with the pickaxe. That's why Toadette made me head of the repairs and rebuilding team.
Oh yeah! Luigi exclaimed, giving him a thumbs up. It felt so nice to have people actively working with him, there was no way he could do it all alone.
It's looking great so far, Bank Toad.
Thanks. The green-capped Toad grinned.
Sorry, I can't chat more, Luigi. It's back to work for me.
He went back to hammering down a plank of wood. Luigi didn't miss the distrustful glance he gave Wario and Waluigi. He really didn't blame him, honestly. It could be difficult convincing the Toads that the troublesome criminals were now on their side. Wario and Waluigi were gazing around at the town with intent eyes. But they appeared to becoming more and more disappointed by the second.
They never change, do they?
Luigi sighed to himself as he continued walking down the road.
Guess they're just now realizing that there won't be anything worth stealing here.
Further up in Toad Town, Luigi saw Toads hauling away the broken chunks of Bowser's war machines that had littered the streets for so long. The Bowser statue in the town square fountain seemed to have vanished into thin air. He wondered how long it would take for there to be a new statue of Princess Peach set up. Just thinking about the princess made Luigi feel concerned. He hadn't heard about her at all in all the long years since the Battle of Toad Town. Was she being held prisoner by Bowser, yet again? Or was she dead? Luigi shook his head, clearing his mind of the depressing thought as he walked past the fountain. No matter what had become of the princess, she'd be proud of what they were doing. That was what mattered. Peach's castle looked considerably more grand than it had during the Koopa Troop occupation, although there were still many Toads hard at work to remove the scars of Bowser's attack. Luigi stepped through the wooden doors into the castle foyer, as the Toads guarding the door gave Wario and Waluigi suspicious glances. The inside of the castle was the same as Luigi had remembered it, although the painted walls depicting hills and clouds were a bit more faded. There was still the familiar checkered flooring with the ornate sun-like design in the hall's center, however, and the plush, regal red carpet.
"Now this is more like it,"
he heard Waluigi snicker behind him. Luigi heard the sound of a door opening and Toadbird ran out, carrying a heavy book. He nearly dropped it when he saw the group.
"By boggity Luigi, you're back! And with those ruffians, too!"
he exclaimed in shock, before adjusting his glasses.
"Where's Cobalt?"
Luigi's face fell. He knew he'd have to explain this eventually.
"Cobalt was taken,"
he admitted shamefully.
What?"
Toadbird gasped.
"The Koopas did some kind of drafting thing. They took him, so that they could force him to join the army." "Preposterous!"
Toadbird exclaimed, throwing down the book in anger.
"You don't know Cobalt like I do, Luigi. He won't stand for that. He'll take out the Koopas as soon as he's inside." "That's what I'm hoping,"
Luigi replied grimly.
"I don't like this at all."
Toadbird sighed, leaning down to pick up his book.
"Cobalt. He was such a bright and energetic youth. You do know his father held the title of Glitz Pit Champion before the Koopas took it down, right?" "No,"
Luigi replied. This brought the young Yoshi into a whole new perspective. If what he remembered was correct, the Glitz Pit Champion who had climbed through the ranks faster than anybody aside from Mario himself had, the great Gonzales Jr., was in fact one of Mario's old friends. In other words, Cobalt's dad had gone toe-to-toe with Bowser. Twice. Looks like beating up Koopas ran in the family. Luigi glanced at Toadbird, who still appeared extremely concerned. It hurt Luigi that he couldn't do anything to ease the scholarly Toad's worry at the moment, since he himself knew nothing about what had happened to Cobalt.
"Hey, where's Toadette?"
he asked.
"The council room,"
Toadbird replied.
"She's sort of running things around here. I hear she's starting to put together some anti-Koopa defense plan." "Whoa!"
Luigi exclaimed, impressed.
"I gotta check that out. Before you go, may I ask?"
Toadbird said timidly,
"What are they doing here?"
Wario and Waluigi were glancing around the foyer, both looking extremely bored.
"They're allies, I guess,"
he replied.
"We sort of have the same goal, I think." "Oh dear. I sure hope this all works out,"
Toadbird replied, shaking his head before leaving in the direction of another door. Luigi led Wario and Waluigi through the hallways towards the council chamber. This was the same council chamber the princess had held the meeting regarding the Blorbs virus in many years ago. It remained relatively unchanged, with its blue horseshoe-shaped table. Light was streaming in through the windows and falling upon Toadette, who was manically shouting orders at a stressed-looking male Toad who was sorting a bunch of documents.
"Tell Bank Toad's gang to gather up every old bill blaster they find and dump them in the empty lot where Red Cap's Cafe used to be,"
she screeched.
"And while you're at it, write out an order telling somebody to do something about that crashed airship blocking off Fungi Street. It's getting to be a real pain."
She looked up suddenly as she saw Luigi come in.
"Luigi!"
she exclaimed cheerfully.
"And Wario and Waluigi." "Hey lady!"
Waluigi grinned.
"This castle ain't looking too shabby,"
Wario commented.
"Think the Koopas cleaned it out of loot when they took it over."
Luigi, Male Toad, and Toadette all shot him dark looks.
"Toadette, these guys are going to help us!"
Luigi exclaimed, resting his hands down on the blue tablecloth.
They're running a huge operation down at Mushroom City. A criminal operation?
Toadette asked skeptically.
Can we trust these guys? Oh, you can trust me, all right.
Wario scowled.
I may be a scoundrel, yes, but I want old King Koopa out of this kingdom just as much as you do. As long as we can agree on that, I promise there will be no double-crossing. Right, Waluigi.
He glared at his gangly brother, who shrugged.
Yeah, whatever. Well, that's a relief.
Toadette sighed, before smiling. Male Toad still didn't look convinced, though.
Luigi, you have to see what we've been planning.
Toadette said cheerfully, running over to him.
What?
Luigi asked.
Toadbird was telling me about some defense plan. Exactly.
Toadette exclaimed, brandishing a paper before Luigi's face. It showed a crude sketch of Toad Town which left much to be desired. What was interesting about it, however, was that the picture seemed to show the town encircled by a wall. There were arrows pointing to certain parts of the wall, with labels saying "Bill Blasters here." There are also marks throughout the town labeling where traps would be set and additionally where the escape routes would be. Despite its appearance, the picture had quite the impact on Luigi.
This is great!
He exclaimed, taking it from Toadette so he could examine it more closely. He could already see how it was going to work, providing an efficient defense system for a town which previously had no defenses aside from the Mario Brothers and the extremely ineffective Royal Guard.
But how are you going to do all this? Easy.
Toadette replied, twirling around in excitement.
We're all pitching in to build the wall out of all the old Koopa Troop junk, as well as a couple of Toad houses which are beyond repair. As for the weapons, we're gathering every old cannon and Bill Blaster we can find. Toadbert's been researching like mad, trying to figure out a way to fix them. There's more than enough ammo left in this castle from back when it was a Koopa Troop garrison, and I'm 100% confident Toadbert'll make it work. Have you seen what a whiz he is? Wow, this sounds serious.
Waluigi commented.
I almost feel out of place here.
Luigi turned around to face the criminal brothers.
Wario, Waluigi, I want you to get together as much of the gang as you can spare.
He said, racking his brain to figure out things they could do.
We need fighters, weapons, vehicles. You think you can handle it? Don't be stupid, Green Mario.
Wario growled.
I am a Wario.
Luigi took that as a yes. He glanced back at Toadette's plans. Could they hold off a Koopa Empire assault? He wasn't sure yet. But he knew that they stood a chance. If they all pitched in together, they would win this. Governor Flame sat back in his comfortable red leather office chair, drumming his fingers on the armrest impatiently. The hottest pop song in the Koopa Empire, a song called My Beauty Cutie Pie, which was sung by Sector 3's ruler, Princess Wendy, and was by Flame's opinion absolutely terrible, blared on the radio. Corporal Blue Shell stood at attention next to his desk, ready to help him with any task he desired.
Is something wrong, sir?
Blue Shell asked as Flame swayed the chair back and forth.
Quiet, I'm thinking.
Flame snapped. He glared at the banner which was hanging at the end of the wall opposite his desk, which, as opposed to being the generic Koopa Empire banner, was Sector 8's special banner, which was orange in color. The logo on it differed slightly from the ordinary banner in that the hair on the head it depicting with slightly thinner and spiker, since it was supposed to represent Prince Bowser Jr. rather than Emperor Bowser. It also represented every problem Flame was going through right now.
Blue Shell, am I a loyal Koopa?
Flame asked, turning to face his assistant. Blue Shell shrugged.
I suppose so,
he replied dryly.
Then why is it I feel such feelings of distaste towards my prince?
He sighed melodramatically.
Why?
Blue Shell asked.
Well, it isn't his fault, really,
Flame said, gripping the armrests tightly as he straightened himself.
It's just that he's the one who's actually fought Mario. He's the Emperor's favorite son, who everybody thinks is going to succeed him. Do you know how hard it is to stand out when you are the subordinate of such a popular Koopa? I know that you would relate to the feeling, being my assistant, after all. You're very relatable, sir,
Blue Shell replied with pursed lips. He seemed a little irate, Flame noticed. He couldn't imagine why.
Let me explain my dilemma,
Flame exclaimed, falling back on his chair and sinking into the comfortable cushion.
Luigi is back. Nobody knows this but me and you. If I am the one to capture or kill Luigi, I will become extremely famous. I will become the favored candidate to become the next Grand General after old Sheldon steps down, and, having been the one to have brought down one of the Mario brothers, will become nearly as renowned as the Emperor himself. I will gain exquisite wealth. My own castle, which would rival even those belonging to the royal family. I would be able to marry into any high-born family I wished to, and my own family line would be elevated above all others save for the Emperor's.
His voice was rising in intensity as he continued to speak. Blue Shell continued to watch, looking rather bored.
By the time Emperor Bowser is succeeded by one of his children and that child has more children and they start looking for heirs, my own son or daughter will be the most eligible by far. Who could pass it up? The idea of a child with the blood of both destroyers of the Mario brothers in their veins. By the time I am old and grey, or perhaps even a dry bones, imagine that. I will see my own grandson sit upon the throne of the Koopa Empire. A capital idea, wouldn't you say? Sounds amazing, sir,
Blue Shell replied.
If you don't mind me asking, though, why aren't you attacking Toad Town right now? We have a strong enough army to crush it. Even Luigi won't be able to stand up to 10 of our warships. But that's the problem,
Flame responded fiercely, slamming his fist onto the armrest.
If I mobilize an army strong enough to crush Luigi without fault, news will travel to Bowser's castle fast. Prince Bowser Jr. will hear of it, and then he will come storming down to Toad Town with his own fleet, kill Luigi, and take all the credit. I deserve this glory, not him. He already has had his chance. Can't you guys work something out?
Blue Shell suggested, with a skeptical look in his eye.
I mean, from what I've heard, Prince Bowser Jr.'s pretty easygoing. He isn't too ambitious or anything. Definitely one of the better-natured princes, that's what they say. I'm sure he's super busy right now. From what I've heard, things are almost starting to look like an all-out war down in Sector 2. He's probably working full force to help his brother out in driving back Prince Roy's forces. He'd probably appreciate you stepping in and taking out Luigi so he wouldn't have to do it.
Flame sighed, this was why he hated explaining his goals to others.
Blue Shell, this the reason you are only a corporal, while I am a general and the governor of the Mushroom Kingdom. If there is even the slightest chance it won't work out for your own benefit, don't take the risk. I need to do this, by myself. I just have to figure out a way to do it without the prince noticing.
He straightened himself, before glancing at his assistant.
Get me some tea, it'll help me think. Yes, sir,
Blue Shell replied, leaving the room. Flame propped up his arm with his elbow and rested his head on his hand, looking over the pictures that decorated his office. There he was, receiving his promotion to general, being honored after his destruction of the Snow Mad Armada, sitting at the table with the other members of Koopa High Command. He was the very epitome of what a Koopa troop member should be. Only this minor inconvenience stood in the way of his path to the top. Once he overcame it, not only would the Mushroom Kingdom finally belong to the Empire for good, his position as the Koopa Troop's head officer was all but guaranteed. The future was looking decidedly bright for General Fortuga's Flame.